Hey everybody, it's Dr. Laura McNeil, and I am here with Stephanie Graves. Very excited about that for our Tuesday night career coffee talk. And we'll give everybody just a few minutes to get joined, joining the talk, and be sure to log on to, let me see, I believe it is streamyard.com/Facebook, and that will allow us to see your comments and see your questions. There's Mandy Chin. Hello, how are you? So glad to see you. But Stephanie and I have worked together for several years. Oh, thanks, Dave. And we taught together at Samford University and learned and grew together and shared ideas and shared courses. And so I'm really excited to have her here tonight. She has tons of ideas and is a true professional. So, oh, hey, Veronica. Yay. Hey, Gwen. So let me do the formal introduction, and I'm going to read it because it is long and distinguished. So Stephanie is an instructional designer focused on developing engaging and interactive e-learning. She has 10 years of experience in tech, finance, real estate, property management, education, and the hospitality industry, with over 7 years of coordinating and developing large-scale corporate training programs, including instructor-led, web-based, and computer-based training for companies large and small, to include IBM, Educate Online, SPM, Mariner Finance, and Cox Communications. So some big names there. Stephanie brings extensive knowledge of technology, I can vouch, and organization to the corporate training environment. And she also teaches and leads others as an adjunct professor with me at Samford University's Master of Science Education in Instructional Design and Technology program. So yes, and tonight we're going to talk about real-world perspectives on freelancing, contracting. We'll talk a little bit about portfolios. We may do some show and tell. And be sure to add your questions as we go. We will get to all of them. And be sure to give StreamYard your permission to use your name. So go to streamyard.com/Facebook and just say yes. That way your name will show up. Hey, Susan. Hey, Sarah. Oh my gosh, yay. Yes, I know it's extensive. So I will turn it over to Stephanie after that. And I've asked her to tell us a little bit about her life prior to ID and then how she got into the career.
So first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm very excited to be here and talk with everyone. Also a little embarrassed that you're going to read that whole thing out. I would have made it a little shorter.
Oh, good. It's all good.
So before I started as an ID, I started in training and development. So that's where I started out, but I did not think I was going to be there. I originally have an undergraduate degree in family sciences. I thought that I was going to be a social worker. And after college, I started interviewing and realized that I did not want to be a social worker. I loved the classes, but I did not want to do that as my day to day. Every interview I went on, just something didn't seem right. And I was like, wow, I just think I need to do something else. So I had to kind of you just graduate, you've got student loans mounting, you're job searching, and you're like, oh gosh, what now? So I knew that there was a human service delivery component to that program. And so I kind of fell into an opportunity that kind of put me on my current career path. I'm more of a fly by the seat of my pants type of person anyway. If I make a plan, it never works out. So I just kind of see where life takes me and where my career takes me. I don't have this, extensive, went up the ladder at some organization. It's just not the way that I am. It's not the way that I work. I have more of an entrepreneurial, spirit anyway. I really like to work for myself. So I kind of fell into this job through a contracting company with IBM, and I was kind of like the grunt worker on a traveling training team, and got to travel the world and went to 11 countries in a year, and kind of started off there and really enjoyed, training and development and kind of like working with and educating people. I wasn't actually doing the training, but I realized that I wanted to. So road warrior travel is something you do short term and when you have no responsibilities. And I was settling down and having a family. So I eventually started working with a company called Educate Online. And that is where I met someone who really inspired me on the ID path. She had just completed a graduate certificate program at UMBC, which is where I ended up going, University of Maryland, Baltimore County, because I lived in Maryland at that time. And she introduced me to Captivate, and I was automatically captivated by Captivate. I loved it. It was Captivate 6.5, and I didn't even know that kind of thing existed. I really am a very creative person, and I just loved. There's kind of like this organized structure combined with like the creative element, and being able to kind of like do a little bit of art, but it still like pays the bills essentially. And so she really inspired me to go forward and complete the graduate certificate program. And so that's what I did. And then 2009 happened and the whole world and job market fell apart. So I got laid off and it sucked. It really did. I didn't know what I was going to do. All the jobs that like I would have been, applicable for because I only had a couple years under my belt were gone because there weren't as many of them. The first place companies cut is their training department. And then people who had 20 plus years of experience were applying for the entry level job. So of course they're going to hire them, not this girl with like 3 years of experience, an infant trying to get her graduate certificate. So I ended up going into real estate for a few years, kind of veered off the track, and then thought, gosh, I guess, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a real estate agent. And then I found my way back. I found a great opportunity here in Birmingham and decided to move, working as a training specialist with a property management company because I had experience in that. So, just kind of like building on that real estate experience I had learned and turning it back into the career path that I wanted. And then I finally finished a master's. Working on a master's with young children is not easy. And that really opened the door to contracting. When I finished the master's program, I said, I really want to be in charge of the work that I want to do. I really want to work with e-learning. I know that's what my niche is. And decided that I was going to do it my own way and become a contractor.
That is great. And I've talked to several people. You may have to mute if we have your phone on or anything. So I've talked to several of our educators about how powerful their experience is and how powerful it is to just take that and then translate it to ID. And I love that you had that real estate experience and then it matched up with the property management company. I had designed courses in fiduciary management for Texas A&M's law school, which led to me being hired by the bank that I work at now. And I was like, really? Because you don't want me adding or subtracting anything. It's always going to end up in the positive. But it's funny how life just connects these opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
You sometimes have to look for them, but they're there. So yes, I love that and you're doing so much and you have such an interesting background. So what is life like as a part-time freelance ID contractor or e-learning contractor?
It can be quite hectic and difficult to manage, and especially a lot of different projects and things like that. It ebbs and flows, and there's ups and downs, but it's amazing, and I wouldn't change it for anything. It offers a lot of great flexibility. So, I'm a working mom, and up until recently, it was really cool that I got to work from home. Now everybody's working from home. But it gives me the flexibility that I need to be there when my kids need me. And I'm also, able to stay relevant, even though I'm not working a full-time job, so that when my kids do graduate, I won't be someone who was kind of like the stay-at-home mom that's now looking to recreate her career. So it's just really offered a lot of opportunities. And it can be stressful at times, especially if you're worried about, kind of like in between sections. So, or between contracts, a contract will end and then you aren't getting paid until the next one. So it presents its challenges, but I wouldn't change it for anything. I really enjoy the flexibility. And then also working with different clients. So I've worked with, all these different industries because also as a structural designer, you don't have to pigeonhole yourself into any specific field. I've worked with medical, I've worked with pharmacy, I've worked, real estate. I've also done education. I just finished a project a few months ago with McGraw-Hill. You can just kind of like just be all over the map and do several different things. And so it's always something new. It's always challenging. And I get bored easily. So it's not like I'm always doing the same thing all the time. I mean, right now I'm working on a project with a company out of DC that works with like forest education. I'm also working with a hospital out of Atlanta. And I'm also working with a contractor who is building some training for the CDC. So it keeps me going and it keeps feeding me. And I also get to learn about all these really cool topics and have really odd, random facts and information
Yeah.
at my disposal to talk about. So it's fun.
Love that part of it, and you don't have to be an expert. You do have to be an expert in taking copious amounts of information and boiling it down into something that is manageable for the learner, and that may be you talking to the subject matter expert over and over and asking all the questions and translating it into common language that connects with the learner. But that's amazing, and I love the keeping fresh with the different contracts. And we were talking earlier today, and you had said while you do work with the different contracts, you have developed some relationships in the field, and so once you're established, they do come back to you and say, hey, we have another project, right?
Yes, exactly. And so that's kind of where I'm at. At the beginning, I was doing a lot of job searching. It was constant job searching. I felt like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Because job searching can be so stressful, which I'm sure a lot of the people that are participating in this are doing right now. And it can be really rough. But as a contractor, it's kind of like you're almost always searching. But because of the fact that I'm kind of like on a part-time basis, and I have worked out some networks and relationships, I'm kind of at the point now where I am only working with a couple of people that tend to have enough work for me and what my needs are, to be able to keep me going. So now, if I had to generate more income, it might be more challenging and you have to be more on top of it. But I'm kind of at that point where I think I've worked with one client for like 4 years and he just keeps coming back to me. I might not work for a couple months, but then like right now I've got 3 projects and I'm working like 10-hour days. So, but then I'll probably have off the week of Christmas. So it's just the way that it goes. And it's also kind of the way it's kind of ebbed and flowed. I've also had the summer off like almost every year since I went this route. So I'm able to spend that time with my kids, which has been amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So Mandy asked, how soon do you start applying for your next contract when you know your current project is coming to an end?
That is tricky. I feel like you always kind of have to keep your feelers out there. The way that I found my first contract was I'd kind of decided, I'm kind of tired of the 9 to 5 and I want to do something else. And so I just went on LinkedIn and I took my heading and I changed it a little bit just to say like seeking a freelance opportunity. And then that's how I wasn't even really looking. They found me. So I had a couple people reach out to me and say, hey, we have this project. It's however many months long. What's your rate? And I was like, oh, I don't know. And I like gave them a dollar amount. They were like, okay, awesome. I didn't realize how cheap I was putting myself out there for. It's something I had to learn in time, like how to like value my time and how much I should charge based on, how much you need to make because you're not going to have benefits. So I'm not going to, my health insurance is through my husband, thankfully, but there's no 401k, there's no IRA. I have to pay taxes, a little more taxes than most people do. So I had to set up an LLC to make sure that I could kind of shelter some of those taxes. Instead of working under my own name, I'd have to pay like double the amount of taxes at the end of the year. And so kind of like taking those things into account, not to mention there's some hours you don't get paid for. You don't get paid for the emails you send back and forth. Sometimes depending on how the client is paying you, there's just some, and like when you're job searching while you're also working, you aren't getting paid for those hours. So I had to really think about how to charge for all of that.
Right. Right. And let me see, similar question from Mandy. How do you know that you can handle so many projects at one time? And I'm going to guess that you start out with one and see how it goes and then build. But I will let you, you are the expert.
If you're smart, you start out with one. But I was not that smart. So when I decided that I was going to be a contractor, I didn't realize how much work was available. There's a lot of contract work available. I assure you, if you are trying to go into contract work and you can't find the contracts, I just don't know what's going on because there are so many. So I took on the one that I had, and they're like, "Oh, it's a part-time thing. You won't be working a ton of hours, like 30 hours a week." But they wrote my contract so that I would be available 40 hours a week if needed.
Wow.
But I didn't know. I'm like, oh, they said it's just 30 hours a week. That's all they have a budget for. I'm going to be fine. And my former employer, as I was walking out the door, was like, oh, hey, you still have these two modules that you're working on. Would you mind, since you're contracting and you're working part time, can you take these on? And I was like, oh, yeah, sure.
Right.
Not a problem. Yes, I can do that. 2 clients. Wow, this is awesome.
Oh.
And I got contacted by a third client, and I was like, and it was like really super quick, like a couple weeks just to, knock out a storyboard. Oh, I can storyboard in my sleep. I'll be fine. I've been doing this for years. The next thing I know, I had 3 part-time jobs and I was working 60 plus hours a week. So, but I was just so excited. I was going to, build this company, I was going to do this. And that's when I had to kind of like dial it back and say, okay, my husband was also kind of like building his own little company on the side, doing what he does. He works in IT. And so we were both kind of like, we have 2 kids, but we're both working an absorbent amount of hours, and our kids just weren't getting the attention they needed. So I had to take a step back and say, okay, how much can I realistically work? I learned that 30-hour a week contract, they suddenly wanted me to work 40 hours a week. And when I said, well, no, it's a 30-hour gig, they were like, oh no, oh no, your contract says you're available 40 hours a week. So, you really have to watch those contracts, see what you're committing yourself to, really read them extensively, have somebody else read it and see if they think there could be something, hidden in there. And then definitely you need to like work on how to be more realistic. And I'm still trying to figure out. Thankfully, the 3 projects I'm working on are with the same company, and he has my back. So the guy that I'm working for, he really backs me up, and if we have one that like really needs to get rushed out and finish up something, he communicates with them and finds a way to nicely, you know, spin it that this was just going to be a couple weeks longer because we've got to get the other one out. So he's awesome at that. I did work for one contractor that they did not have my back. The client was horrendous. I kind of knew going in the client was going to be challenging. And every challenge the client presented, they never had my back. They were only worried about the client. And so it really made me look bad. And it was very frustrating because I felt like I was trapped because I was locked into a contract. I had to complete this work. I was, relying on the income, and they were just like pushing me to do more and more and more and more. And it wasn't realistic. So, you have to also learn how to say no or learn when to walk away and to break that contract, depending on what the consequences are. So it's something that you kind of have to learn in time, but I definitely suggest if you're smart to start off with one, not 3.
I get it. I get it. And this is not one of the questions, but I'm just curious. Do you set out blocks of time since you have 3 projects? Do you, and I know you're fly by the seat of your pants, but is that a possible way to structure those and try to stick with blocks of time?
It is a very good way to structure it. And I do have like certain work blocks, and I do things like that. But something that I think a lot of people don't understand about being an instructional designer, whether you're a contractor or if you're in an 8 to 5 salary position, is that there's a lot of project management to this. So when you think about instructional design, even when I was in my program, I didn't really understand what instructional design, it's kind of like one of those things that it's not as clear cut as I am a physician or I'm a bank teller. You know what I mean? When people ask me what I do, and I would say, "Oh, I'm an instructional designer," they would kind of like be puzzled and be like, "Oh, so you do like, like redesign living rooms?" And I was like, "Well, no."
I
And
could.
then they have the questions.
Yeah.
Could you come over and give me some pointers on how to like style my bookshelf? And I was like, not that kind of designer. And I
Right.
had to really think about how to put it into words of what I did. And I had to start explaining, okay, so I organize, corporate training programs, because really you're developing overarching large projects. And these projects are very time consuming for those here who have experience in instructional design. If you're just starting out, these projects take months, sometimes years. Sometimes they're constantly ongoing and evolving, and they never really truly end because the content's always changing. So you really need to have a lot of project management skills, and um, a lot of employers, whether they're hiring you as a contractor or as a regular salaried employee, expect you to be able to manage those projects. You don't always have a project manager that's assisting you with that, and they will lay it on thick. They will want you to do 4 or 5 projects at one time, and they're not always realistic. It's something else I did not hear in my university classes, just how unrealistic they can be sometimes. They want you to push out a project that should take a month or longer, and they want it in 2 weeks. And they don't care about all of your steps in the ADDIE model. They just want it done. They want you to skip those steps. Actually even had someone tell me once that I had too many steps in my process. So, you really, if you are thinking about like, what can I do in the goal for 2021 to make myself more marketable, I honestly recommend getting some sort of certification in project management, because you will not only need it, it will put you out in front of some of the other candidates for sure. It's with one of my goals for 2021 is to get some sort of project management
Right.
certification.
And Dave and I have talked about this. And so in the instructional design scope, I think if you're learning from the beginning about instructional design, I think solidify that knowledge and then do the project management piece. I mean, if you can do both, that's great. And I think there are smaller project management programs or certifications. I know there's the big PMP, which you pay a lot of money for and take the exam, and I would love to do that. I don't know how realistic that is, but yeah, project management is huge. It really is just a massive part of yes. And I was trying to think of what we were talking about. I think it was a couple of weeks ago, and you were developing a 1 hour Rise course, and you told me that with the team, I think that it took how many hours was it? I mean, it was 30 or 6. I can't remember, but it was a significant amount of hours to develop 1 hour of training.
Oh yes. So I typically try to estimate for just the basic, no, not a rise course necessarily, but like storyline. If there's not a ton of interaction and we're not really talking animation, I've been working a lot with animation lately. You're talking at least 3 hours for every minute of completed runtime of the final product. So, if you have a 20-minute module, I don't do math in my head, what's 30 times? Sorry, what's 3 times 20? What, 60 hours? But even for the 1 hour Rise module, I had to say, okay, well, it's probably going to take me at least an hour to an hour and a half of instructional design work, and that's going to take me another half hour of loading everything, per finished minute into Rise. So that's going to be, I think my 60-minute module is going to be like 120 hours to complete it. So, and that's if I'm just working on it by myself. Then I have situations where, we have a larger project and maybe there's 4 or 5 modules that need to be built and needs to be done in a few months. So we get into a situation where I'm the lead ID. I have a couple more IDs working under me. We hire on a couple of animators. We hire voiceover artists. And then those projects are more difficult to manage because you're managing different people. And a lot of organizations that have larger training departments, probably like at Regions where you're at, they have all these different people doing these different jobs. You're not kind of starting from beginning to end. And so you're having to someone has to manage all of those different people, making sure they're doing everything on time. So there's a huge, huge project management part that I didn't even understand when I was starting, that it was really needed or how to do it, and I still struggle with it. I was just talking to the person that I'm working with right now about it, and I was like, "Yeah, I really need to work on project management skills." And he was like, "You and me both." So, and he's running the company. So I think it's something that we don't always think about because you're thinking, "Oh, I'm an instructional designer. I'm not a project manager." But project management is a huge, huge, very important component of the job.
Right, right. Let me get to some of these questions. So Gwen asked, do you apply for the job or does the company come to you to hire you? And I think that we talked a little bit about that, um, in the beginning, you're going to be out there putting yourself out
Uh,
there.
yes, and you should always be trying to keep in touch with everyone. If I know I have let's say these three projects I'm on right now wrap up and I know I'm going to be done in February, I'll start reaching out to some people I've done work for before and just say, hey, I wanted to touch, especially if you know it's someone that constantly hires contractors,
Yeah.
reaching out to them and just saying, hey, do you have anything going on right now before I start looking for the jobs and applying? But in the beginning, you will definitely be looking for the jobs, and you should be. The reason I wasn't really looking when I first got contacted was because I was just kind of testing the waters and I wasn't really sure. I was still working a 9 to 5 job. I was nervous to leave it. Everybody has bills. They reading some advice after I made the jump. A lot of people suggested that you had like a year's salary saved before you go into the contract world. Thankfully, I have another partner in my household that also makes money and can cover most of the bills, so I don't have to make as much. That's something else you should consider, especially if you're a one person, I mean, one household earner.
Right.
And it is a jump. You kind of just like, depending on how much you can plan first, you just kind of like jump and like either fall flat on your face or you figure it out. It's just kind of like the way that it is. So I think you have to be able to let go of some of that job security, which, I mean, none of us really have job security. One thing I've learned about job security is that any job you're in, no matter how valuable you think you are, you can be replaced tomorrow.
Absolutely.
I think I read somewhere that if you think that they can't survive without you, that the job posting will go up before your obituary if you were to pass away tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I'm not.
Absolutely.
I'm not to be like grim or anything, but I take pride in my work. I work really hard, but I also understand there's a ton of people out there who are also great at their job and also working hard.
And
So job security is.
you have to have that work-life balance too. You can't give
Yes.
everything to your job. The job will be there.
Exactly.
Get up tomorrow.
Exactly. So, it is kind of taking a leap of faith and kind of, working hard at it. But I really feel like if you really work hard, if you wanted to go into contracting, you can definitely do it. It's just there's a lot of risk involved, and you have to ask yourself how much risk you can take on. So I wasn't sure at that point, and I just kind of had a bad day at work and was kind of like, oh, I'm tired of this. Honestly, I was not happy, and I just kind of like popped it up there in my title on LinkedIn, and then within a few weeks, I had somebody reach out to me. So especially also depending on how much income you need to make, you'll also have to decide, how constant you need to keep the stream of income coming in. It just depends on, what you're doing. And some people do just contract on the side in addition to their day job. If you have time for that, a lot of people do that. And a lot of people get started that way. They kind of like work their nights and weekends and they get to a point where they've replaced their salary and more. Because you can charge much, much more hourly than you can. I mean, I basically, when I left, I was making double what I was making in my day job and working 30 hours instead of 40 hours, and I wasn't commuting. So, but I was lucky to find an opportunity like that, kind of like right off the bat, that was like a 10-month contract. That's not always possible. Sometimes you're working, piecing together 3 and 4 month contracts to make it through the year. It just depends.
Right. And Dave asked, what tools do you use to manage your projects, and I guess keep track of your time and your invoicing?
I don't. That is another goal for 2021. Again, I'm not a good planner. I'm a fly by my seat kind of gal. So, I have to, I try my best. I've learned though through the years, like how long it typically takes me to do something. And so I do take on a lot of like flat fee work. And so I just do my best to budget in how many hours I'm going to need to put into the project. And I haven't gotten burned yet. But again, I had experience before I started contracting. So I knew typically like roughly how long everything would take. I do need to get a more formalized process in place, to be honest. And I definitely, monkey see, monkey not do kind of advice. Definitely try to put something into place if you're going to go that route.
Mm-hmm. And Dave, we've used Microsoft Project, which is really nice. It does take some training, which can be done on LinkedIn or YouTube, but that's a really robust tracking system for projects. And we've also done timelines in Word and Excel, and not fancy at all. So that has been, it just depends on how big the project is, how many people are involved, how many moving pieces, all of that stuff. And Dave also asked, have you heard of other freelancers teaming up to share resources and tools or help one another when things get crazy?
I have not. I'm not a very good networker. So I'm not really an extrovert. I'm more of an introvert. And I'm not really good at like networking. Like I do have a few people in the field that I'll like reach out to and ask like a quick question. I was gonna I think y'all met with Michelle Cesar last week, and she kind of really mentored me through the process. She just happened to be on the first project that I was on, and she really gave me a lot of great advice. And I kind of like, hung on to her. I guess I made sure like I reach out to her every once in a while. I'm like, I miss you. What are you doing? Because she's such an amazing person anyway. And she gave me a lot of like really good advice. So I'll reach out to her. Like I was, this Rise project I'm working on right now. I've never worked with Rise before, and I wasn't really sure what to expect. I knew about it. I played with it. I've also tried to stay away from it because I feel like sometimes um, it's not learner centered enough. It's more content centered because you're just kind of plugging it in. But some clients, they just don't have time to do the whole shebang and everything you want to do. So we have a client that really needed something kind of quick and they wanted to use Rise. And so I'm learning about it. So I had to call her up and say, hey, have you worked with Rise? How many hours should I, kind of like estimate for this project? I'm not really sure. And she was able to help me with those things. There are a lot of groups on LinkedIn though. So there's groups for different tools that you might be using, like Captivate, Storyline, etc. Just to like say, hey, I'm stuck on this, because you are kind of like on an island. For a lot of it, I'm on an island because I'm just a contractor working for one company. And so I'll be like, hey, I'm stuck. This Captivate whatever is having an issue, and I'll post something, and then I'll get an answer usually pretty quickly. There's also a lot of freelancing or like groups in there. Again, I just kind of like, I didn't really have an organized process getting started, so I didn't really get involved in a lot of those groups. But I know that I've heard of them that are out there, as well as job searching groups and different things like that. Just like the group that Laura has for you guys here. So there's definitely some resources out there online. And yes, you can connect with other instructional designers and keep up with them. I'm just not a very good networker. That's part of the problem.
Yeah. I know. We network.
Yes, I network a little bit, but I'm still
maybe networking.
Well, I guess when I talk to Michelle, and she just knows so many people, she's so well connected. I'm just like, I will never be that well connected. I just won't. I don't know. Maybe one day it could happen.
You're connected with the right people. That's what it is.
This is true. It's connecting with the right people.
Exactly. And please do reach out to Stephanie on LinkedIn, and Michelle. It's posted in the feed, and she can answer questions if you want to post. If you think of something afterward, Stephanie's in the group as well. And so Regine said, are you with a company, or is there a place to post your resume for companies to choose if they want to work with you?
I'm not with a company. I'm on a 1099. I'm a contractor, so I don't have a W-2. I don't get a stable paycheck. I get paid as work gets completed, and sometimes, if it's a very large project, I'll get paid like a certain portion up front, and then a portion in the middle, and a portion at the end of the project. LinkedIn right now, I would say, is the go-to place. If you are job searching, you need to have a LinkedIn account. If you are working, you need to have a LinkedIn account. It is just social media connects us in so many ways, good or bad. And I really feel like LinkedIn is where I found most of my contract work. I do have one person I work with that just happened to graduate from the same program, and they sent out an email to all of the students asking for someone to do a quick turnaround job, and I've worked with him for a while. But honestly, LinkedIn is the place. I mean, you just have to basically make out your LinkedIn page like it's a resume essentially when you are job searching and direct them constantly to your LinkedIn page. You can find jobs there. Like I said, just changing the headline to say that you're searching, and I think they now have a account that you have to pay
Work.
for.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can say ready to work. Now I think they have a ready to work button. Back then they didn't. I just had to add it into my thing.
Mhm.
Um, so I mean, this is kind of like a good way to find things. There's also a lot of companies out there that specialize just in like learning. I think Clarity Consultants is one.
Yes.
You have it's hard to get noticed on there, but they do have a lot of them. Training Pros, I know they have a lot of them.
Mhm.
I still get notifications from ZipRecruiter, and I apply for things from time to time on there if I really need something.
Mhm.
But for the most part, it's networking. So I've gotten some things kicked to me from Michelle. She's like, hey, this person needs some work done. And they don't, I can't take it on right now, or I'm not doing contracts right now. So definitely making those connections is a good idea. I try to keep in touch with everyone that I've worked with at different organizations as long as they were another like contractor. I don't reach out to a client that I don't have. It's not mine. You know what I mean? Like I usually contract through another organization. So, like the three people I'm working with right now that I'm actually physically designing for and developing their e-learning, I would not come back to them and say, hi, I would like to see if you have any more or like any more options. Actually, I've signed contracts with my contractor, with my organization that I work that I'm contracting through that I won't solicit their clients and can't solicit their clients. And I need their explicit approval if they love me and fall in love with me and decide to hire me full time. And I decide to go that route. I have to have their approval to take that position, and they usually get a cut of my first year's salary. So it's very involved, and but when you get to a point after you've been contracting for a few years and you really develop some really good relationships and you have been doing an awesome job, they usually will reach back out to you and ask you. And then if you don't have anyone, they'll often say, "Well, do you know anyone else?" So it's good to be connected. It's something that I should work on, but I've just gotten to that point that right now I'm surviving. If it ever comes to a point that it's not like that, I'll have to go back and just hit the job boards like everybody else
Mhm.
and, revamp my resume and put together probably a better portfolio than I have right now because it's only a Dropbox link with a bunch of files in it, which is fine if you just need to
Mhm.
put something together quickly. You don't have to have like a super professional stylish website, although that is my goal at some point. But right now, I'm just kind of off of word of mouth
Yeah.
for the moment.
So we've got a lot of resources to in here about organizing. And Lori, shame on me for forgetting Trello. I should have remembered that as an awesome tool. But I'd like to get to Juliana's question, and I think it's Juliana, not Juliana. So correct me if I'm wrong. But she says, without sounding naive, from learning Captivate, practicing, and creating pieces for your portfolio, will companies take a chance on a new person? And she knows it's subjective, but what are your thoughts?
So that's a tough one because a lot of times they do want to see experience. But when you're creating your resume, you need to find crafty ways to make yourself sound like you have instructional design experience. Sometimes when I don't know if this is the best advice to give, but sometimes when you fudge things just a little bit, it helps you out just because, you may not think about maybe some stuff you've already done. So, maybe you worked in an organization and you had to help, train someone. Well, you trained them, so you have training experience. You need to put that on your resume. I always was told when I was searching for searching and working with different people, like helping with my resume, You look at the job listing, you look to see what key things are in the job listing, and then you tailor your resume to that job listing. You try to match up as many of your skills as you can with that job listing. If you are looking to, do instructional design work, and you're not doing it, it's not on your experience, it was not in your prior job. Sometimes I would make things into instructional design work. So I was working in a training development department. They didn't have e-learning. It's like, hey, I want to do e-learning. Let's create an e-learning project. I also learned that just because I didn't know how to do it didn't mean I couldn't learn how to do it very quickly. So, for example, when I was working at one organization, they needed to redevelop all of their annual required training, but they didn't want a click next module like we had been doing. They wanted something that was like video production. But we could not afford video production. We were a very small company, and that was just not in the budget. And they were like, well, what can we do? And I had just learned about what is now Beyond and what's Go Anime at the time. I had never worked with the tool, didn't even have an account. I just heard about it, looked at it a little bit, and I was like, hey, I created like a 1-minute video with like my voice and my husband's voice. And I was like, look what we can do with this. And they were like, so you can write these scripts and, you know how to write out like a scene like that, like a video, like a cartoon. I was like, oh yeah, not a problem. And I totally sold them on it. Now I was a salary employee, and then I got back to my desk, and it hit me when I just like lost myself into. I was like, I have never written a script in my life. How do you write a script? And so I went on YouTube.
You figure it out.
I started looking up like, how do you write a script? Script examples. I just started looking and finding things. And I also would go through Training Network magazine. That's one of the organizations that I follow. I do recommend, especially if you're trying to innovate and learn new things, find a couple organizations, have them like send a subscription for your email, and take maybe the first 15 minutes of your day when you sit down at your desk and you're not really ramped up yet. That's what I kind of did in the beginning, and just watch a webinar or read an article. And if your job is training and development related and you're on work time, that's professional development time. You can use that time to do that. Don't be afraid to take a portion of your day in your day job if you're already working in the field to expand your skill set, because your employer is not going to tell you to expand your skill set. It's your responsibility to always be learning and to always be looking for something else new to do. And when somebody comes to you and says, hey, can you do this? You never automatically say no. You try to see if you can pull it off, even if you haven't done it before. That's the way that I have kind of like done things. Yeah, sure, I could write a script. Somebody said, hey, can you make a RISE course? And I was like, yeah, sure, I can make a RISE course. What does that pay? I'm not going to say no. I'm going to figure it out.
And so you can lean on your colleagues. You can reach out to Michelle, or you can reach out to someone else and say, okay, where's the best resource, or what YouTube videos.
And another thing that I've told a lot of people that don't have work samples, because they're like, I don't know where to start, I don't know what to do, because you may not have any experience at all whatsoever. E-Learning Heroes is part of the Articulate brand, and that's what I'm actually working with more now. And they have daily challenges or weekly, I think it's weekly challenges. And so they'll say, hey, make a couple slides that are like a puzzle game or something like that. And then everyone shares it. And they make like a couple slides. And I have seen several people over the years who I just kind of saw every week. They were posting these like little projects, and then lo and behold, they posted a profile, and I go and look at their portfolio, and it's all of that. They have no work experience, but they have all these samples of what they've created, and they just thought of any topic possible. It could be yoga. It could be like a little 5-slide course on yoga, but the thing they're looking for is not have you necessarily worked for an organization for 5 years necessarily, depending on the job that you're applying for. Sometimes they're just looking for your skill set. And if you can show them that you can do the work, yes, sometimes they will take a risk. They will take a chance. Also, I feel like there is a shift in just the work environment altogether with the gig economy. And with millennials, a lot of people who are, the newest generation, they're actually not going to college. because they don't want the student loan debt they're watching their parents deal with. So I'm not telling you not to get a college degree. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that some companies are now just looking at what can you do with technology, especially since as the older generations are aging out and they may not have been very tech savvy, and now it's a very tech savvy world, and they're looking for people who can learn technology. Not that you can't learn technology at any age, because you can. I was not a technology driven person. I didn't have an email until I was like 19, and I'm on the cusp of being a millennial. I'm like in the last year. I was born in 81. I fought having a cell phone until I absolutely positively couldn't live without one anymore. I was not a tech person. If you would have told me when I was 19 and I started my journey towards on my career path, you would have said, one day you're going to be, developing with software, I would have laughed. I've been like, no, that's not going to be me. I have no desire. But that's the world we're in now. It's all about technology. So you should always be in charge of your own learning path. You should always be challenging yourself and trying to learn new tools. Now, because I took that chance and wrote some scripts and created a beyond animation, I now work with it all the time, and it's fun because it's almost like I'm creating cartoons for work. So you just kind of have to put yourself out there. And again, if you don't have any work samples and you're not sure where to start, definitely go on to Are You Learning Heroes, and give it a try. I think you can get a 30-day trial with Articulate, and it might be possible to cancel a trial and start a new one with a new email address, I think. I've known some people that have done that. It's kind of got to do what you got to do. But I think the contractor's license, don't pay the full price. If you look at the contractor's license cost for Articulate 360, I think it's $500 for the year or $600 for the year. Obviously, I have to pay for it because I need it to work with, because that's another thing about being a contractor. Usually you have to buy your own software and have your own laptop and all of your own equipment. So I think I only had one client that set me up and sent me a laptop, and I was like shocked. Yeah. But because they wanted to protect all their information. It was a financial firm, and they didn't want. I wasn't allowed to download anything. I don't even have the files that I created. I'm not allowed to have them. Yeah. Based on the contract, I wasn't even allowed to put in a USB port. It didn't even have a USB port. There was no way
either. Nothing.
They blocked it. There was no way for me to save any of my work for later. It's all theirs.
So sad. Yeah. I wanted to point out, Regine had asked about charging for contract work, and I know that Parker Grant, who is in our group, posted something about this in LinkedIn, and that you can always message Stephanie on LinkedIn, and we can look at see if we can post that Parker's link in the group as well. And I think it depends on the project. It depends on your level of experience. And we have another question. How important is it to be a team player in this field?
Very important. You have to be a team player, and you have to be ready to get a lot of criticism, a lot of feedback, constructive feedback. It's not always constructive. There's a lot of that out there. And one thing they never told you in university was how people were going to rip everything I just created apart. That's the best part, right? So you really, what was the original? I'm getting off on a tangent. What was the original question?
Are you, how important is it to be a team player?
So being a team player. So, I had this one experience where I was working with someone. The first time I worked on a contract, it was with Michelle, and she was awesome. She was a rock star. And we were like besties on the project. It only lasted a couple of months. I wish I could work with her again, but there hasn't been an opportunity to present itself. And she was just so amazing. We matched our styles together. We communicated, and it really made it look like those two projects were not created by two different people. Then I have been in boats where, I was the instructional designer, I was the ID, and they were the developer. And everything that I put in the storyboard, I was told was not possible. And it was very, very frustrating. And the job paid really well, so I didn't want to walk away. But it really, the work in the end suffers. And you're going to have to learn how to work with some of those difficult people. especially if you're in a salaried job role and you're not looking to like change jobs because it doesn't look good to change jobs every 6 months if you're not a contractor. Being a contractor, it looks fine. So you really have to think about that. But yes, teamwork is very, very important, especially when you're working with a team. There will be situations where you will be the only person working on the project, and then there will be situations where there are a ton of people. I've worked on projects where there were like 6 of us, a couple of instructional designers, a graphic designer, somebody who was creating animations or After Effects videos for us, and then also somebody else who was all loading it into Articulate, so Storyline. So it's very, very important, and a one bad apple on a team can ruin an entire project. And it can also keep a project from coming to fruition. I've seen where, in a salary position, the course just didn't come to fruition because somebody just never did their share of the work, and then eventually something else became priority, and there's like a half a course sitting there.
Right.
So it's very, very, very important.
Yes, definitely. And some of that, and I've learned it over the years, is setting those firm expectations at the beginning when you have your kickoff meeting. And I've done both freelance and corporate and healthcare, but I've learned the importance of setting those expectations and repeating those expectations, and then having those weekly meetings. And when you're dealing with or working with, I should say, a group of SMEs or subject matter experts, and I've had as many as 12 on a project, which is, oh my gosh, and they were all brilliant, which was wonderful. And I was really blessed to have that experience, but it's a lot to get agreement on certain things, and you have to pick your battles and not cry very much, when they don't like something. So
yeah, and you may come up with an idea or a concept that you think is amazing, and they might not like it at all. They might hate it. I've definitely been in that situation. I've come up with entire scenarios for like scenario-based learning, and then be told we don't like it. I even developed it and got it completely done in beyond, like lots and lots of hours. I mean, it can take typically a couple days just to make a minute of content and beyond, and then put it all into Articulate with everything, and they're just like, scrap it.
I don't like it.
With this, and they're paying you, so you can't say no, and it breaks your heart. You're like, oh my gosh, but it took so much time.
Keep that. Don't throw it out. Don't throw it out. You might need it, or put it in your portfolio.
Yes, you put it in your portfolio for sure. And there was something else that you said that made me think of something. Oh, the relationship with SMEs. They're so, so important.
Yeah.
You really want to find a way to find common ground with them. You do not want to knock head with your SMEs. You need to really be careful. It's kind of like a fine line of not offending them, because they have all this knowledge and experience, but they are not the expert with instructional design. And I have had that conversation where a SME thought they knew best what needed to be in the module and how it needed to be done. And I had to very carefully tread that line of, well, instructionally, this is important because of X, and just be very careful with that conversation. And, you're going to be spending a lot of time with them. So you also want to just sometimes it's just best to start just a rapport with someone that you're working with, especially when it comes to SMEs. You kind of want to form almost like a work friendship, I guess, because people, and that's another thing for job searching too, is that people hire and want to work with people they like. So a lot of working with someone, or even just applying for a job, is making things more conversational. And you're still in a business setting, you're still going to be professional, but making sure that you're also kind of like in this work friendship where you're not going to like hang out after work, but you can sit there and chat about different things. Find a common show that you both like and watch, or comment, look at something in their office that you think you have a shared interest in, whether it's a hobby or something like that. Find some other common ground to talk about, because the more that y'all get along, just personality wise, the better the project is going to go, the more streamlined, and the easier you're going to be able to work together. So those relationships are always very, very important.
Very, very important. And it is a delicate balance. And I know the students that we've worked with have had internships and have learned that firsthand. And yeah, developing that rapport is really crucial, and that you're not taking their course from them. It is still their course, but we are there to help them deliver the most engaging and memorable learning experience for their students or for the learners if it's a trainer. Um,
And
so,
it's going to help you when you need buy-in,
right.
especially so in one position that I was in, we had a lot of older employees because we were doing working in senior housing, and they were so nervous that people wouldn't know how to use the technology, and I wanted to make it more interactive. And so I really had to work hard with those relationships with the executive board that I had to go present. I mean, I had to like walk into the executive board with all of the board, all the executives. It's a small company. The VP is there who owns the company. The I guess vice VP, or I don't know how you say that, EVP, executive VP, sorry, and then
Mm,
as well as all the directors of all those departments, and they all had a say. And I had to really kind of like work and figure out what they liked, what they didn't like, because literally they were so high level they could kill a project altogether, even if it was something we really needed. So really being able to like kind of sell your product too at the same time, to get that buy-in, because when I wanted to implement some new things, I had to do it little bit by little bit by little bit. We went from Click Next courses to fully enriched, animated, interactive courses by the time that I left there after about 5 years. Sorry, I have a cat. She's
yeah.
in the room. There's two of them in here. So if they make an appearance, I apologize. Um, so it's always important to work on all of those relationships,
Right.
especially because you want to make your stuff come to fruition.
Yeah. And there's a question, and I'd love to, I know we're a little bit over time, and if anybody needs to drop off, this will be recorded, and it may cut off actually at 7 o'clock. I'm not sure. We're testing this, but I'd love for everybody to stick around if you're still game to break open your portfolio. Um, Okay. And let me answer this question while you're thinking about that. But what do you do when someone is taking advantage of teamwork? And I'll take that because that's something that can happen, and it is unfortunate. And if I hate that, if that's what you're going through, I think it
Mm-hmm.
goes back to that kickoff meeting where you actually define in writing, this is going to be the job of the instructional designer. This is the job of the subject matter expert. This is the job of the design manager. And and it may take a couple times to get it right, but you'll learn, unfortunately, with experience, how you need to outline those projects and how you'll move through them. And having those project meetings and making sure that people know this is your job, this is my job, and it's never a perfect process.
Mm-hmm.
And Juliana, I saw your comments. I know now how to pronounce your name. Thank you. But yeah, so we had talked about portfolio. We could also put this in the group uh,
Mm-hmm.
if that works better for you and share it that way.
Yeah, so my portfolio is a Dropbox link.
Right.
I can share some samples of like what's on my desk right now, like what I'm working on, but I can also just send you the link for the Dropbox if that's what you'd like me to do. And it just has like, something that I started doing in the beginning that was kind of like a big mistake I didn't realize what I was doing is that I was showing them all the end products. So I was just showing them a course. It was fully fruition and completely done and at the end. And then I would get questions in interviews like, well, do you know how to write a storyboard? I'll be like, yeah. I mean, I wrote the storyboard to develop a course. They're like, oh, well, could you send us an example of that? So sometimes we don't think about like the design plan. Those aren't the fun things. It's not the end product, especially for e-learning. And I understand that there's different facets of instructional design, but even if you're writing manuals and you're a technical writer, they want to see the whole process. They want to see that you know how to create an outline. They want to see that maybe it's talking about what you were talking about a moment ago about somebody not pulling their weight. You should have, if you're working with a big group of people, you should have meeting minutes for after your meeting that kind of like assigns and states what everyone is supposed to do after the end of the meeting. and what they're responsible for. Like you can post one of those. With all of those things outlined, you need to be showing like if you do use an Excel spreadsheet to track your projects, or if you can export one, definitely put it out there. One time I was asked in a job interview, which I was not prepared for, how many projects do you have running right now? So, they want to see that you can use project management skills if you do have them. So, project management samples, if you have something, obviously you need to make sure that you're not, expelling any kind of confidential information, as well as all of those pieces that are maybe not the flashy fun ones at the end, like the final manual or the final e-learning product or the final job aid, also including those initial upfront pieces that are structural.
Yeah, and in January, I want to definitely get into that and maybe have some workshop time when we can create some of the not so sexy pieces, but the ones that you really need to have an example of and go through that structure. So yeah, that's great. So I think there's a share screen if you want to take a few minutes, and then we can also if you like. And I think it's always great to take a look at other folks' portfolios. And I did want to say, and this is so, I should not print out and destroy trees, but I loved this, your little about me. And this would be a great portfolio piece to have. Do an infographic about you, simple, easy, free programs. I just thought, and I posted it in the group, loved it.
Yes, so infographics are huge right now. I would not send over an infographic as your initial resume. And also, I had one that was produced that was, I have one resume that does not parse well. And so you need to also think about that with your resume when you're sending it out, that it has to parse well. So the older traditional ones, I have like a new modern, fresh look to it. And it's, not infographic, but it doesn't parse well, I guess is the best way to say it. It's not like individual bullet points. It's like different sections and there's more of like a graphic design to it. So it's a good portfolio piece because infographics are so hot right now. And, just something like that. Maybe you didn't have a project that you created one for, but you know everything about you. You are your own subject matter expert. You're your own SME. You know what you've done and what you like and what you do. So you can easily put something like that together. That one was created, I think, with VisMe, I want to say. It's actually a few years old. I have a few more years of experience with but that's not important. So it was very easy to create. I think I created it in like 20 minutes. I actually created it for I was teaching IDTE 556, which is a multimedia class. And so it was a great way for to teach them how to create an infographic, which they really are big right now. And you can embed those into something like Rise, which I'm going to show you in a second. Let me share my screen.
And Susan, we can definitely talk about that if we don't get to it tonight. I think there's different ways. I think that would be okay as long as you're not showing proprietary information. You can also use screenshots, and so some different ways to get around that for sure.
So I have 2 monitors. That's always an extra challenge. I have 3 actually. So
I'm so jealous right now.
They weren't cheap.
Yeah.
But the write-off at the end of the year.
Right.
You gotta have your own tools when you're working as a contractor. So I just kind of I had to suck it up and just make the investment. So this is just like a mock-up that I made. These are Beyond characters. If you are not familiar with Beyond and you want to add a new software, I've been working with it for 10 years. So a lot of times I think everyone knows what Beyond is. But the actual truth of it is, a lot of people don't. My last 3 clients had no idea what it was. Like, oh, I'm using this. They're going to know what it is. As soon as they see this character, they're going to know where it came from, but they don't. And a lot of organizations are starting to look towards, away from the Click Next courses into something that's more interactive. So these are actually course maps. And you could easily pop this into, and it's actually animated. It's probably not large enough for you to see it. Let me see, because it's a GIF. So the path is moving, and so is the ski lift. I don't know if you can see that.
Yes.
The client was, it's static.
So cute.
It was already built into the software. I didn't even create the movement.
Nice.
It wasn't that much more time to do that portion. And a lot of those, there are a lot of things that are already pre-built. So it's a very easy, you don't have to have an animation background to use it. It's a lot of presets you kind of like group together. And just that little bit of movement, because she had never seen it before, she was so excited about it because it's something you haven't seen before. But she didn't know that it was not that complex for me to do it. So it was a big wow factor. If you put that in your portfolio, people are going to be like, wow. And then you just put a hotspot button or a clear button, a transparent button if you're, sorry, I got to get a transparent button if you're in Captivate. And then I guess you just make your button in Articulate clear, pop it over there, give it a trigger. And they can use it as and you can even, you can send them to different places in the module. So that's one thing they're working on. So for that client, that's kind of transforming into where I put it in Rise. So I found out by going on YouTube when I was starting this Rise project, the person I contract through, he was like, this is a new client. I want you to wow them. I want you to do some extra things. I'm going to make sure you're paid, but I'm not charging them for it. But I want to get more of their work in 2021. So I want you to wow them in Rise. And Rise, you can't do a lot. But I found out by watching some things on YouTube that you can add a GIF. And now Beyond allows you to download GIFs.
Nice.
So I've been playing with GIFs. They don't take that long. Sometimes it's just picking a character, putting it on a page, giving it emotion. In like less than 5 minutes, I have a GIF of a character waving high. And so I'm always I've read this book called Steal Like an Artist. I'm always stealing like an artist. I'm always looking for other things that other people do. There is no way that I can come up with everything on my own. I am always looking for somewhere else to find an idea. Now, I'm not going to steal it and copy it and take it as my own, but I'm going to look at it and say, hey, I could do something similar, or I could make that work for my project and what I'm doing. Let me see how I can switch my screen.
Yeah. And then quick question. So Beyond has a 14-day free trial. Did your client pay for Beyond? How did that work? Or do you pay for it?
So I do not pay for Beyond because there is a transfer fee. I have in the past just to make portfolio examples when I first started working with it. So you can, I think it's like $600 for the year. The free trial is nowhere near as expensive as it used to be. Unfortunately, I've discovered this as I was teaching at Stanford because I was teaching to my students. And each year they allowed you to do less and less of the free trial. It used to be 30 days. You could download videos. Now I only think you can download a video. So this is just a gift that I've inserted into Rise. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with Rise. This is Rise. I've actually been pretty impressed with what you can do with it pretty quickly. So I created, the company has never used animation. And when I first showed it to them, they were like, oh, I don't know if that's going to match our company culture. But then she showed it to her VP. And her VP was like, this is awesome. Because she's like, it's not going to match our other training. But I've won them over. Because again, I'm trying to wow them for my boss. So, I found this way. This is actually not my idea. The YouTube video I watched did this. They said, oh, hi, and put a character waving to start the module. And I was like, I'm going to steal that like an artist. I'm going to do that myself. And so I just added that. And so instead of, originally when they were using Rise, it was basically like a manual. And I'm creating it into a scenario-based learning. And I'm taking them on a journey. We're going on a hike. The mountain before that you saw, which we're going to see in a minute, that's their course map because they have like a whole like forestry background. That's what their organization is all about. So we are going to climb to the top of this mountain to learn how to deliver modules virtually because everything they do right now is in person. So they're actually, this is like a train the trainer to train the trainer, essentially, is what this module is. So I thought it was a really good example to show you guys. And it's what I'm currently working on. So, now it's not like Articulate. If you were in Articulate, you could take this map and you could click on these and it could take you to another section of the course. Here, you just get like a little blurb about each one. But, it's much more fun than bullet points. Mm-hmm. You've got to think outside of the box and find ways to, especially if you're doing e-learning, the bar has been raised in a lot of places. And they don't want to see a quick next course anymore. They want to see something more engaging, but you've got to find sensible ways to do So again, still using these little characters, which are a lot of fun. This one didn't even have movement on it. She's just standing there and saying, get your backpacks ready. And I don't want her to talk. I have to take that out. And it's just a GIF.
Mhm.
Instead of an image is how I uploaded it. And then let's see, there was another part. I'm always looking for different ways to present things visually because, like I said, infographics are so big right now. Let's see. There's another one, kind of like implementing it. There's some other things they're doing. You kind of I had to each. They had lots of little sections, so kind of like micro learning. Another thing that we did is we made the learning objectives questions. Instead of saying you're going to learn blah, we want them to start thinking. So we're actually asking them questions. How do I choose the right path? What are my scheduling needs and options? Different things that need to be taken into consideration. Instead of saying you will learn about your scheduling needs and options, we're asking them, what are they? When
Mhm.
we're to train the trainer, what are your needs and options? So instead of
You
them
can
just
still measure that at the end.
hmm,
You can still measure that at the end. So do they
yes,
know how to choose the right path? Do they know what technologies are available? And we're way going into teaching mode here. But
mm-hmm. Yeah.
that
So
measurement
then
evaluation.
yeah, definitely. And yeah, we both have a tendency to follow the teacher read. And so then I took like the path and I actually like gave them a path. I'm using a theme. I'm trying to implement it throughout. I could just be saying here are 3 bullet points, but instead I'm giving them like visual images. And then in another section, let's see, let me see if I can navigate over there. I was trying to present like the considerations, and I was thinking, how do I do this? How do I compare and contrast these two things without it being 2 lists of bullet points? And I toyed around with it. It took me a while, but I finally said, what about when you look at like different software and you want to purchase it and they have the side by side comparison and they have like check boxes and things like that? Why is it? Oh, it is opening. It's open. Okay.
And then
Um,
question. So
yeah.
Articulate 360 has different programs. Rise is one of them, and then Storyline. Those are the 2 big ones. You can actually import Storyline files into Rise now, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's
Um,
pretty cool.
yeah, but Rise is more block-like, and
Mm-hmm.
then Storyline is a little bit more involved. It's more robust.
Yeah. And then so for this, kind of like an infographic, I didn't know how I was going to pull this off in Rise because there's not a lot of options in Rise. But I remember just seeing all these like pricing options different places. And also I wasn't sure. I wanted to do check marks, but in this box, because all this is a chart, I don't know if I can show you how. There's like, if you come down here and like hit enter, like a little plus sign will pop up and it gives you options, bullet points, and then a number list, I think, and then just a regular, plain, basic chart like you start in Word. And there's no customization, there's no design options for it, nothing. So I had to really play with it. I ended up going with just 3 cells and 1 row.
Okay.
And I was like, oh gosh, all I can put in this box is text. How do I get around this? And I was like, well, I started going into like windings in Word to see if I could copy and paste something, and that didn't work. So then I was like, well, what else can I find? And so I eventually started searching for Unicode. Never worked with Unicode before. I did this all last night. And I was like, what can I do with this? And so I found this tree in Unicode and I plugged it in, and it's a tree.
Right. Oh, nice. Nice.
So, participants, how many participants can they have? It needs to be a small group. 1 tree.
Yeah.
Flexibility, how flexible is it? 1 gets 3, it's a very flexible, and 1 gets 2, it's not as flexible.
Okay.
So initially I started with bullet points and text, and I made a visual. It should still translate. I might have to, add a little blurb of text to explain it. But just trying to find different ways to present stuff visually and not always using a software the way that it's supposed to be used, trying to think outside of the box and see how I can put a modern, fresh spin on it. The client may hate this, even though I spent a lot of time on it, but now I've got a new idea that I can use over and over again, and I already have a couple of ideas of where I want to use it, where else I want to use it in the project.
Right.
So just kind of thinking outside of the box. And then another project that I'm working on, let me know if I'm moving too fast. I have one more little sample that I want to show. And I think that's all I really have for right now. It is actually a storyline file. Let me set it up. I'm trying to rethink questions. I had a client that just doesn't like that every question is a radar button. And so I've been working on trying to challenge myself to find different ways to create questions.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, these are things you could do if you don't have a job where you're currently working. You could just, you could just like create something for fun.
Yeah, Heroes is wonderful to prompt you to create new things.
Yeah.
They're constantly upgrading.
Did it come up yet?
Not yet. And there's a question, if Beyond and Rise are similar, in your opinion.
No. They have two completely different functions. Beyond is just to create animations, and I also pull out clips of stuff. And Rise is to create and score, like to develop and SCORM e-learning modules or remote learning modules. The client I'm currently working with, I kept saying e-learning, and she corrected me on the feedback that it needs to be remote and online learning. And I've never used those two phrases before. It's always been e-learning because there's so many different ways that everybody says something. You know what I mean? Like there's just different organizations that use different terminology. And that's one of
the titles of our jobs. It's constantly it's a discussion ongoing.
So this is a question we're asking them. So instead of telling them to make sure that if a patient has a falls risk, this is for a hospital, and this is an older patient, so I think she's over the age of 65 technically is what we're going for. So she's automatically been flagged as a fall risk at the hospital when she arrived. And instead of telling them that you need to make sure that the bed alarm is on, that she has a pair of yellow socks, and that they're on her feet, they're nurses, they're educated. I'm taking my audience into account. These are things they should already pretty much know. So instead of asking them this question or teaching them this point, I'm making them think about it. So I'm giving them a hidden image and I'm asking them to locate all the hidden images. This is a drag and drop question. And what they'll do is they'll drag these tags on top of these three things. And the client was like, well, what if they don't understand what they're supposed to do, or they don't understand that those things are needed? And I was like, well, what we're going to do is we're going to set it up is that if they don't get it correct, they can't move forward. And I was like, how many times would you need to get this wrong to learn that you need those three things?
Right. And I think part of adult learning is being able to make those mistakes and making it practical. Mm-hmm. Like it's okay to fail and try again.
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that we're doing with Beyond, which is really fun, is we're creating some of these scenarios. So this is to replace a course that was in person, and they would do role plays. And they really wanted the role play to be in the module, and they were really kind of like struggling with moving towards e-learning because they always had, they're teaching, how to basically peer review someone. So how to tell someone else at your own job level, peer to peer, when they're doing something wrong, which is actually very important. It's not a new concept in the medical field. It's been around since the 80s, but a lot of people don't do it because they're just not comfortable with it. Right. So they found that even now, 3 decades later, I don't do math in my head. I think that's right. Maybe not. Somebody will correct me, I'm sure, and then laugh at me if I'm wrong. They really wanted to still have that experience of being able to get it wrong and act it out essentially. But, in e-learning, obviously, or online learning, because, the instructor's not going to be in the room anymore. And they really were having a hard time getting the nurses to come to the training that's in person because they didn't have time to.
Yeah.
And it was hard to require it. So essentially, they're going to get a little blurb, it's a little scenario, it's something that's happening. I can't remember in this one. I want to say they're passing off this patient and trying to get all of her information correct, but hang on. Then after this plays, they're going to get a question that will pop up. And it's going to ask what this nurse is supposed to do, how he's supposed to correct this other nurse. And it's going to give him 3 options. And then whether he selects A, B, or C, it's going to connect to the other options.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not going to be able to move forward. The learner's not going to be able to move forward until they get it correct. So they could be stuck in this for a while. It's kind of like a new way to use a scenario that I found recently. Again, still like an artist, somebody else was doing it, and I was like, hey, that's pretty cool. Let me see if I can do that. I'm always looking for examples. I'm always looking at other people's portfolios to see what they're doing. Because you just can't find all the answers yourself. And especially since I've mostly worked kind of like in a vacuum just by myself because I work as a contractor. And before that, I worked for a lot of like one-stop shop type of situations where I was the only person in the training department because I always worked with like smaller organizations. I didn't really have like a team of people to sit around with and brainstorm, which I would love, honestly. Just somehow I always end up with small companies. I don't know. I don't know what it is.
I know we have 40, which is crazy. I mean, different teams, but that is a fantastic part of doing the peer review. We don't do anything without peer review.
Yeah, exactly. I wish I had that. I definitely do. So, they're going to kind of go back and forth until they get it right. And some of them are really close. We made sure that some of them were like what you thought you might want to do. One of these scenarios, they ask them to what they should do. Should they talk to that person directly or should they go to their supervisor? Because that was the problem they were having. They were constantly going to their supervisor to say so-and-so didn't do this or that. And, we had the supervisor pop up and say, oh, wow, thank you so much for bringing this information to me. But, this is something you could have addressed yourself. I think you should go back and talk to your coworker. And so they get it wrong, even though that wouldn't necessarily be a wrong thing to do. I mean, you would automatically think I need to go talk to my supervisor. But it redirects them. They don't get a you're right or you're wrong. They get a try again. And they keep trying until they get it right. And I can give them 2 options. I can give them, I think there's like 10 layers is where you kind of get limited, inside of storylines. So just trying to think outside of the box and find different ways to do things. Now, this is very time consuming. This would take a lot more than that 3 hours that we talked about before for 1 minute runtime. You definitely have a little more of a time intensive investment. But something like that where they really wanted to keep this component, they had to pay for it. I'm getting paid for it. I'm not getting paid less. There are ways to do it when you get that client that has the right budget that you can kind of like do some of these fun things.
And I think if you create some kind of a template, some kind of, 1 or 2 slides, get that approval, and then you build it out once you have that buy-in. So,
oh yes, of course.
Yeah, not that build the whole project and then come back. And
no, we had actually many, many meetings with me. I sat down and asked them, I don't work in a hospital. I was right up front with them. I was like, listen, I've been to a hospital. I've been a patient in a hospital, but I've never actually been like working in a hospital. So, I don't know your procedures. I definitely don't have a medical degree or a nursing degree. You're going to have to really, help me out. You're going to have to really explain to me what you want. So we talked in depth about different problems they were having. We made sure that each scenario was something they were currently dealing with. They're seeing repeatedly. One thing was stat locks. I didn't even know what a stat lock was. I'm still not entirely sure. Something to do with bladder bags. And so, that's fun. Just looking up tons of pictures of bladder bags to put into a training module, like my favorite thing to do on an afternoon, let me tell you.
Never know when that's going to come in handy.
Exactly. Right? Somebody would have told me I was going to be sitting around looking for bladder bag pictures and being paid for it. I would have thought they were crazy. So just random things. So, they had to really kind of tell me exactly what happened. And actually, I completely misunderstood where the stat lock was located. Mm-hmm. So I sent a picture of it being something incorrect, and they had to correct me. Yeah. If I would have just gone the whole way through and developed the whole thing, I would have had to redo a whole bunch of work. I have started moving towards rapid development though. I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with that. It's just a lot. To me, it's more time up front, but after I've worked with a client for a while, I like to get more of their feedback throughout the project instead of waiting till the very end of a storyboard. I
Mhm.
prefer to storyboard out like the first section and
Yeah.
get some initial feedback from them so I don't get too far into the project. I've found that it saves me more time on the back end, even though I'm putting more time into the initial project. So I will build out all of the slides, and that's what I was doing because I feel like unless you've worked with a client a lot, or on several different modules or several different courses, it's hard to for them to articulate what they're looking for and what they want. And you meet with them and talk to them and try to get an idea. And then you can still come out of that meeting going two separate ways with two separate ideas. So I found that if the storyboard is not visual, a lot of times they really don't know how to see the end product.
Mhm.
So with Storyline, you can print out a storyboard much easier than you can with Captivate, I feel like, unless they've changed something recently. It's been a couple years since I've been in Captivate. So I've been actually setting my slides because I was trying to build them all out into PowerPoint. And then when it came to development, I was rebuilding it again in Storyline. So I was like, I'm wasting all this time. Like, yes, I'm building it out and I'm not getting client approval yet, but it wasn't like it was helping me save any time because even if they did approve it and then I put it into Storyline, they would be like, oh, I didn't think it was going to look like that. So I found that it's a huge time saver for me, even though at first it felt like it was going to be a time suck. Essentially, it's going to take me more time to do things. And I feel like the client has a better representation of what's going to be there instead of when I was working from just a basic storyboard. Now, you have traditional clients that still want a full storyboard first. And
Mhm.
so what I've done with them is I say, well, let's let's say you have 5 sections. Let's do the first section first and do that storyboard and get some feedback before I write five modules or 5 topics or something to that effect. Even if you have an outline first, um, or they even offer you an outline, there's just so many different ways you can do something, especially if you're contracting and you're not in that organization, you're not in that company culture. I found that it's an additional challenge. I was actually talking to the person I'm working for today because a client took 2 weeks to get me feedback on the initial module. They were off for Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
and then it took them a week when they got back into the office to, get to a point where they could provide feedback. And I'm just kind of like designing in the dark. And I told him, I was like, if I would have been in my role where I worked for 5 years at the property management company, I would have been fine. I wouldn't have had a problem. I would have known what to say and what phrases to use and what kind of terminology was used in the organization. But in this situation, I'm not. I'm kind of jumping in and trying to learn it all and then get it done and then hop back out. So it's good to have some feedback, I think, sooner than later. I try to get feedback as quickly as possible.
I definitely agree with that. Thank you for spending, I mean, this extra amount of time. And I know that this has been so valuable for everyone. And you just have so much to share with everybody. And you're so enthusiastic. And I love all of your advice about pushing yourself to stay current and investigate new tools. Again, if you have more questions or if they haven't been answered, Stephanie's in the group. I'll definitely be checking and we'll try and get some answers in there in the next day or so. But I just want to thank you for being on the show
Oh,
tonight
thank you.
and just loved, connecting with you and seeing what you're doing. It's really
Yeah.
exciting, and I agree. I think seeing the portfolios is just amazing. So be sure and connect with Stephanie on LinkedIn, connect with her on the group, and she's a wonderful resource and just an awesome person. So Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful night. And we will see you next Tuesday.